Ancient Indian scholars understood planetary motion centuries before Europe. They asked the same question we ask today: what lies beyond? But here's what history rarely tells you. Curiosity alone doesn't build rockets. It takes something more dangerous, something more powerful. 1957. The Soviet Union launches Sputnik into orbit. The world watches. The world fears. In India, while politicians debated whether a poor nation could afford such ambitions, one man asked a different question entirely. Can we afford not to? His name was Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. He wasn't born poor. He wasn't an outsider looking in. He came from India's intellectual elite. Gandhi, Nehru, Nobel laureate C.V. Raman visited his family home. But Sarabhai looked around at his privileged world and made an extraordinary choice. He would dedicate his life to something nobody thought India could achieve: building a space program from scratch with nothing. In 1962, Sarabhai and his colleague Homi Bhabha wrote to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Their letter was simple but revolutionary. It read, "We propose India establish its own space committee." Nehru could have said no. The nation had no money, no infrastructure, no expertise. But he said yes. And with that single yes, everything changed. But having permission wasn't enough. Sarabhai's team needed something else: the perfect location. Science demands precision. Rocket launches require specific geographic coordinates. The team needed to be close to the Earth's magnetic equator, a technical requirement only a handful of places on the planet could satisfy. So through 1962, they traveled. Through Kerala's villages, through fishing hamlets, through areas that tourism hadn't discovered. And then they found it. A small village called Thumba. Thumba wasn't chosen for its infrastructure because it had none. It was chosen because geography had blessed it with exactly what science required. And because sometimes the greatest things happen in the most humble places. Show me a place where history was made, and I'll show you a place where ordinary people said yes to an extraordinary idea. Now here's where the story becomes something truly extraordinary. What Sarabhai's team had found wasn't just a location. It was a home. Someone's home. Several someones, actually. Over 300 families lived in Thumba. Fishermen, farmers, women who dried fish on the beach, children who played in the sand. And at the spiritual center of this community stood a church, St. Mary Magdalene. For generations, this church had been the anchor of grief. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, prayers whispered in moments of crisis, the sacred refuge of an entire people. In 1962, Sarabhai's team approached the bishop, Reverend Peter Bernard Pereira. They didn't bring promises. They didn't bring wealth. They brought only a story. They said, India is a young nation. We are poor, but we dream of reaching the stars, and we believe Thumba is where that dream begins. We're asking something impossible. We're asking you to give us your prayer hall. What happened next defines who we are as human beings. The Reverend invited Sarabhai to Sunday Mass. He stood before his congregation, fishermen, families who owned nothing but their dignity and their faith. And he told them the truth. Scientists want to launch rockets from our village. They want to take the church where our parents prayed. And then he asked them, "What do you say?" The congregation voted unanimously. Yes, they would leave. They would relocate their church. They would give up their prayer hall so that the world could watch India reach for the sky. Within 100 days, the new church was built nearby, and the old church, the sacred ground where generations had knelt, became a workshop for rocket science. A place where prayers once rose, now equations rose instead.
Now, before you imagine this as a story of heroic engineers in white lab coats working in gleaming facilities, let me tell you what actually happened. They had bicycles. When you don't have trucks to transport rocket parts from the harbor to the launch site, you get creative. Rocket components, nose cones, fuel tanks, electronic instruments were carefully balanced on bicycles and pedaled through the sand lanes of Thumba. The fishing boats that had carried nets for centuries now carried rocket science. The harbor that had seen only fish being unloaded now saw spacecraft hardware being transferred from ship to shore. The local cowshed became a laboratory. The priest's room became a design studio, and the church, the sacred prayer hall, became their workshop. These weren't failures of infrastructure, they were solutions born from necessity. This was engineering at its purest, taking what you have, understanding what you need, and refusing to let the gap between those two things stop you. Meet the forgotten geniuses of Thumba: H.G.S. Murthy, D.E. Swardas, M.R. Curd, and a brilliant young engineer named A.P.J. Abdul Kalam, who would one day become President of India. In 1963, he was just another pair of hands, working by lamplight in a converted church, sketching rocket designs on paper. They had no Silicon Valley, no venture capital, no promise of fame or fortune. They had only knowledge, raw, powerful, unstoppable knowledge. And they had determination. They had each other. Day after day, night after night, this team calculated by hand. They assembled parts they'd purchased from NASA for a fraction of what they should have cost. They tested systems in makeshift environments. They solved problems no one had seen before with tools no one would recommend. And somehow, through sheer force of will, ingenuity, and refusal to accept limitations, they built a rocket.
November 21, 1963. Dawn breaks over Thumba. Dignitaries have arrived from across India. Dr. Homi Bhabha, the architect of India's nuclear program. Scientists from every research institution in the nation. The governor of Kerala, the bishop who gave his church. All standing on this beach, all watching. The rocket sits on the pad. Nike-Apache. Humble. Improbable. Impossible. Then the problems begin. The hydraulic crane that positions the rocket develops a leak. The remote control system malfunctions. Every single system tested 100 times suddenly decides to test the engineer's nerves instead. But here's the difference between a team that's only ever succeeded and a team that knows failure is not an option. Sarabhai's team didn't panic. They didn't wait for reinforcements. They fixed it. Right there, right then. Because
unlike the superpowers with unlimited resources to absorb failure, India had to get this right. The first time, on this day, in front of the world. The final countdown begins. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launch. For 8 minutes and 32 seconds, India was no longer a nation of the poor. India was no longer a nation told to wait its turn. India was a nation of dreamers who had become achievers. That rocket carried more than instruments. It carried the dreams of 300 fishermen who gave their church. It carried the calculations of engineers who worked by lamplight in a cowshed. It carried the vision of one man who looked at his nation and said, "We belong among the stars." And for the first time in history, the world had to agree. In that moment, standing among his team at Thumba, Sarabhai did something extraordinary. He sent a telegram to colleagues around India. Just 4 words. "Gee whiz, wonderful rocket show." But what he really meant was, "We are here. We belong among the stars." That same day, Sarabhai turned to a young engineer named A.P.J. Abdul Kalam. He looked him in the eye and said, "Now we will build a satellite launch vehicle. India will have its own satellites." In that moment, one launch, one sentence, a nation's destiny changed. That rocket from Thumba didn't just mark a technical achievement. It marked the birth of the Indian space program. It showed the world what was possible when a nation refused to accept its limitations. 12 years later, India successfully launched Aryabhat, its first indigenous satellite. Then came more achievements. Chandrayaan, the Mars orbiter, landing on the moon. The Thumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station evolved into what is today known as the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, a monument to vision, to ingenuity, to the audacity of dreams. But the real monument isn't made of steel or concrete. It's made of the belief that a poor nation can achieve what the rich nations said was impossible. We opened with a simple truth. Humans look up. We always have. We always will. But what you didn't know then was that looking up is only half the story. The real revolution happens when someone looks around, at their community, their resources, their impossible moment in history, and asks, "What if?" Vikram Sarabhai looked up at the sky, but he also looked around at Kerala's fishing villages, at engineers working in cowsheds, at a congregation willing to give up their prayer hall, at bicycles carrying rocket parts, at human determination that refused to be stopped by poverty or politics or impossible odds. And he asked, what if India could reach the stars? 60 years later, India still looks up, not with wonder and nothing more, with wonder and achievement, with aspiration and capability. That poor nation that launched rockets on bicycles now launches missions to the moon. The fisherman's prayer hall still stands, preserved as a monument to the moment when a small community said yes to history. Every scientific breakthrough begins with someone looking up. But remember, it also begins with someone who looks around and says, "We can do this." Somewhere right now, someone is looking up and asking, what if? In that question lies the future.
India dreamed, India dared, India achieved, and the cosmos changed forever. Thanks for watching The Forgotten Genius. This story matters. Share it with anyone who needs to know that greatness isn't about resources, it's about determination. Subscribe for more forgotten stories of human achievement. Special thanks to ISRO Archives, Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Historians of Indian Space Program.